Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. Today, we're diving into the Epstein files. Over 3 million pages. And what's in those pages is going to shake you. Names, dates, patterns, connections that go far deeper and far higher than most people are ready to accept. But before we get into specifics, I want to do something a little different. I want to pull way back, and I mean way, way back, 100,000 foot view. Because what you're about to see in these documents is not an isolated scandal. It's not about one man. It's not about one island. What these files reveal is a symptom, a glimpse, a tiny crack in the surface of something much, much bigger. And if you don't understand the bigger picture first, the details won't make sense. So stay with me here. Let me walk you through something. So there's a book called Political Ponerology. Okay, so it was written by a Polish psychologist named Andrzej Lobaczewski. So this man survived communist occupation. He lived under totalitarian control. And he spent his entire career studying just one question. Just one. How does evil take over a society? And what he found was stunning. So he found that it follows a pattern, the same pattern, every single time. He gave it a name, pathocracy. And all that word means is this: a small system where a small number of people with no conscience, no empathy, no ability to feel what you and I feel if we see a child suffering, those people take control over a society of normal people. Now, just let that sit for a moment. These aren't people who are just ambitious. They're not just greedy. They're broken. Something is missing inside of them. And here's the dangerous part. They're better at pretending to be normal than you and I are at being normal. They study you. They study your emotions. They learn exactly what to say, exactly how to act, and exactly how to earn your trust. And they use it. And they manipulate, they deceive, and they climb. Now, here's how it takes root. So during times of comfort and prosperity, societies get lazy. You stop paying attention. I stop paying attention. We stop looking closely at who we're putting into positions of power. We start making decisions based on feelings instead of discernment. And the author of this book, Lobaczewski, had a word for this. He called it the historical cycle. Basically, the good times make us soft. And soft people don't guard the gates. And that's when the predators move in. They attach themselves to a cause, a movement, a party, an ideology. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be religious, political, economic. The cause is just a mask because they don't believe in any of it. They use it to gain access. And because they're master manipulators, you can't tell the difference between someone who's genuinely believing in the cause and someone who's wearing it like a costume. And so once they get a foothold, they do something very specific. So Lobaczewski called it negative selection. They start removing the honest people, the competent people, the people with integrity. And they replace them with others that are just like themselves, other manipulators, other predators, people who will do what they're told, not because they're talented, but because they're controllable. And over time, every layer of leadership gets infected. The language starts to change. Words get redefined. Good becomes bad. Bad becomes good. The people telling the truth become the enemy. And normal people start to feel like the world has gone insane because it has. The inmates are running the asylum. That's pathocracy. Now, we've seen it play out in communist regimes. We've seen it in dictatorships. We've seen it throughout history. But here's where I want you to go with me. I'm not going to tell you what to believe. I'm just going to ask you to think. What if this didn't just happen in one generation? What if certain families figured this out centuries ago? What if they realized that the real power was never in sitting on the throne. Thrones are visible. Thrones get overthrown. What if they figured out that the real power is actually behind the throne? And what if they started with money? What if centuries ago certain families positioned themselves at the center of banking and finance? What if they lent money to kings on both sides of wars and collected the debt no matter who won? What if they figured out that whoever controls the money supply controls the nation without even showing their face? And what if, generation after generation, they pass this knowledge down, not in schools or books, but within the family? What if accumulating power was the family business and they had a multi-century head start on everyone else? Now, what if they moved into government? What if they started placing people into positions of power? Not people who would lead with conviction, people who could be controlled. What if the qualification for the high office wasn't intelligence or integrity? What if it was compromisability? Just sit with that for a second. What if the path to power was designed so that in order to climb, you had to do things, dark things, things that could be used against you later? What if bribery was the carrot, but blackmail was the leash? What if every president, every prime minister, every central banker had to pass through a gate, and that gate required you to compromise yourself in ways that could never be made public? And once you did, you were owned. You vote how they tell you. You speak how they tell you. You act how they tell you. Because the alternative is the total destruction of everything that you've built. What if this system built itself over centuries into a pyramid? Billions of good, normal people like you and I at the bottom, just trying to raise their families, live honest lives. But above them, layers of power, local government, national government, financial institutions, intelligence agencies. And at each level, the gatekeeping gets tighter, the compromises get darker, the control gets stronger. At the very top, a very small number of families. People whose names you may not have heard of, some that you have. People who sit above governments, above corporations, above nations. They don't run for office. They don't need to. They own the people who do. What if the wars, the financial crashes, the political theater, the division, the chaos, what if none of it was accidental? What if it was architecture? That brings us to Jeffrey Epstein. Because what if Epstein wasn't an anomaly? What if he wasn't some rogue predator who just so happened to befriend the most powerful people on the planet? What if he was a tool, a cog in a very specific machine? What if the island, the planes, the parties, the cameras, all of it was designed to do exactly what we just talked about? Compromise, capture, control. What if the purpose was never just the evil acts themselves? What if it was about creating leverage over the people who participated? You want to be a senator, a president, a CEO? Fine. But first you walk through this door. And once you do, you belong to them. So these 3 million pages that just got released, they're just the edge, the tiny visible corner of a control system that's been operating in shadows for longer than any of us have been alive. That's what we're looking at today. Not just names and flight logs. We're looking at the machine itself. But here's what they didn't count on. So Lobaczewski discovered something that should give every one of us hope. He found that pathocracies, no matter how powerful, no matter how entrenched, they always carry the seeds of their own destruction. There's 2 reasons for this. First, the system promotes based on loyalty, not competence, which means that over time, every critical position gets filled by someone who's terrible at their job. The system gets more corrupt and more incompetent at the same time. It's a cancer that eventually kills its own host. And you can see it right now. Look around. The decisions coming out of major institutions are so blatantly absurd, so transparently corrupt that even people who were never paying attention before are starting to say, wait a minute, something's really, really wrong here. But second, normal people like you and I are always the majority, always. And normal people have something that predators don't have: conscience, intuition, empathy, the ability to recognize truth. It takes time, it takes pain, but eventually people start seeing through it. They start talking to each other. They start connecting the dots. They start building understanding outside of the controlled channels. And once enough people see the system for what it is, the game is over. Because the entire structure depends on one thing: your ignorance. It depends on you not seeing it. It depends on you believing this is all just random chaos. It's just human nature. But it's not human nature. It's a disease. A very specific, very identifiable, and very predictable disease. And it has a name: pathocracy. And the cure is exactly what's happening right now. These files that are being released, that's sunlight. People are waking up and asking questions they were never supposed to ask. That's the immune response. Millions of people around the world are refusing to look away now, refusing to comply, and refusing to be silent. So that's the beginning of the end. Lobaczewski's greatest discovery was this: knowledge of the system is itself the cure. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once enough people see it, the pyramid doesn't crack. It crumbles. Now, before we get into these documents, I need to say something. I want to warn you. Some of the information I'm reviewing today is deeply disturbing. I'm not going to show pictures, but I'll be going through documents that detail child sex trafficking, torture, human sacrifice, cannibalism. I don't like covering these topics. I honestly, I wish I didn't have to, but someone has to. Because if everyone looks away, the system wins. And I also want you to keep something really important in mind. There's over 3 million pages, and not everything in them should be taken as gospel. In fact, that could be part of the agenda, is to bury truth alongside lies, to create confusion, and to discredit anyone who tries to make sense of it. There are most likely innocent people whose names appear in these documents who have nothing to do with any of this. And there's probably a lot of guilty people whose names never appear once. That's how a system like this works. It protects the ones at the top. So as we go through this, just try to be level-headed, be objective. Don't grab a name and run with it. Think critically, weigh the evidence. That's how we maintain our credibility. That's how the truth actually comes to light, not through hysteria, through discernment. That said, what's in these documents is staggering, and the world needs to see it. So we're going to get into it. Now, before we do that, I just want to remind everyone, especially those that are watching on Rumble, thank you for supporting a free speech platform like Rumble. Thank you for watching me here. If you're watching on YouTube, you should be watching on Rumble. If you're on Rumble, make sure you hit that follow button. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. And honestly, let me know what you think in the comments. Did I miss something? Am I wrong for some reason? Am I right for some reason? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. I really appreciate getting those comments. Also, just so you know, we've recently relaunched the Man in America website. So if you go to maninamerica.com, actually, I'll pull it up for you. If you go to maninamerica.com, you can see we have our new website. This is kind of the version 1.0 of the site, the update. But just so you know, on here, you have ways of getting a hold of me. It has a list of all my social media profiles, where you can find the show, contact form. We're going to be updating this a lot more with content library and all kinds of stuff. But just know that if you want to share the show with somebody, which I greatly appreciate, one of the best ways is just say, hey, go check out maninamerica.com. It's got every place that you can watch and download the show. All right, let's go ahead and dive into this dark dungeon of information. Now, if there's one thing that you'll gather from this entire show, it's that the people in positions of power, many of whom that we trusted greatly, are not looking out for us. And it's not a bad thing for us to realize that, because the quicker we can understand that, the quicker we can stop relying on them and take control into our own hands. Now, one thing that I want to highlight with this is that be careful about how this information affects you psychologically. It's very easy to get really down and depressed and feel like the whole world is just so evil. That's not true, though. Actually, the whole world is mostly good. It's mostly good people like you and I that just want to live a good life. It's just that the power structures have become evil over time. That's what the pathocracy shows us. It's the accumulation of power over generations that happens. But right now, what is happening is that people are becoming aware of that evil, and this is so important. But it's really, really important that we don't let this fall into these dark rabbit holes. Now, one thing that I've been working on as a solution to this, which I highly recommend you check out, is I'm building an online private community, which is launching very, very soon, called the ARC community. So the website is buildthearc.com. We haven't opened it up yet for the public. We have a waiting list of thousands of people that are ready to get in once we start opening it up. The whole point is to create a private, secure place where you can meet people that see the world like you do, people that sense that we're living in the days of Noah, people that are trying to be more prepared and building community. So if you are feeling isolated, you want to meet more people that think like you do and band together with them, the ARC community is one of the best places that can happen for you. I'm going to start with this short video. This is from the U.S. Deputy AG, who has confirmed that there are images of abuse, injuries, and deaths of children in the Epstein files, but the scenes have not been made public. And the reason why I'm starting with this is because what we're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg. And he's also confirming in here that there is footage and images of abuse, death, torture, and terrible things. Now, I'm glad those weren't released because I don't want those kind of images to be passed around. But we have to realize that this is much deeper than we even think. I'll play this real quick, 18 seconds.
Any depiction of CSAM or child pornography was obviously excluded. Anything that would jeopardize an active federal investigation. And finally, anything that depicts or contain images of death, physical abuse, or injury, also not produced. Any depiction.
So again, they have it. They're not showing us. So the whole idea that this whole thing is a hoax, that it's fake, it's not. Though I wish it was. But I want to first start by looking at the bigger picture of this. So here's an email from Jeffrey Epstein to Peter Thiel saying, quote, "As you probably know, I represent the Rothschilds." So here you can see this is from responding. So the initial email at the bottom, this is from Jeffrey Epstein to Peter Thiel saying, "As you probably know, I represent the Rothschilds." And he says a few other things like that. He goes, "I was hoping to figure out a way for the bank that has $160 billion in management can do something in tech. Best client in the world, prehistoric products. It can wait. Good luck in China." Very strange things. I'll be in Europe the 20th to 28th, then the islands. So if you want to come around, the world going west. Anyway, so this is an email exchange from Epstein and Peter Thiel. Now, one thing to know about Epstein, and we won't be digging into it as much in this particular show, but he was heavily involved in a lot of scientific stuff, companies, innovations, patents, and he was very, very transhumanist in a lot of these things, even getting into a lot of the trans agenda. So Epstein wasn't just some financier or some blackmail kind of guy. But what's important here, though, is that he's saying he's saying in a private email to Peter Thiel, a very powerful man, that he represents the Rothschilds. So I just want you to keep this in the back of your mind, because as much as a lot of us, and you probably have seen this, have looked for ties of Epstein to Mossad and Israel and the CIA and these intelligence agencies, which I think there's a lot of truth in that. I almost think that that's what the rulers, or what these bloodlines, these families like the Rothschilds and others that we're probably not even aware of, they want us to think that. They want us to think that, oh, it's just a Mossad operation. But whether it's Israel, Mossad, the CIA, our own DOJ, a lot of these institutions and governments report up. And so I think that it's almost too easy to say, oh, yeah, Epstein, he's Mossad. Well, maybe at this level halfway down the pyramid, but there's a whole power structure above that people aren't focusing on enough. And again, right here, he's saying, I represent the Rothschilds. Continuing, right, here's something else about the Rothschilds. Okay, this is Jeffrey Epstein and someone from the Rothschild family discussed the coup in Ukraine after Maidan in 2014. Right, Epstein saying the coup in Ukraine should provide many opportunities, many. And this Rothschild person says, I miss our conversations and hope you're doing well. I'll be home tomorrow evening. Will you be free? Let's discuss Ukraine. Now we have evidence of Epstein's circle killing and even eating children. Here's the image I want you to look at real quick. Memorandum. Okay. So this is instructions from Jeffrey Epstein to someone at JP Morgan. We know JP Morgan was heavily involved with Epstein, the bank, of its executives. Anyway, he's saying, please wire $11,438 to this account, Ball. So literally he's named his this particular bank account Ball. And that also really makes you understand that what we're dealing with, this is not just human stuff. I really believe this is good and evil. This is satanic, as we'll see continued in this. When you get into what's happening with the ritual abuse of children, the torturing, the murdering, the cannibalism, as much as people called us crazy conspiracy theorists over the past, say 5 years or more, people saying, oh gosh, do you really think that the world's run by these Luciferian death cult pedophiles? You're so wacky. Yeah, truth is stranger than fiction, I know. But if you look at what's being revealed in this, I'd say they fit that category of elite pedophiles that rape and torture children and eat them and do all kinds of strange rituals and sacrifice. So it's all here, not to mention all the pizza stuff, which we'll be getting into pizza. It's sickening. And so this is an email from an agent, a special agent from the FBI, just kind of passing this up the chain because they got a submission that was submitted to them on 8/31/2022 about human trafficking. This is weird stuff. Okay, it says, this is the submitted text. It said, Jeffrey Epstein was bringing children to the Omni, which is a hotel, to human sex traffic them out to rich business people. If you go to 901 East Carey Street, Suite 210 in Richmond, Virginia, in the South State Bank on the top floor, there is a housekeeping door. I think inside the men's restroom once you enter on the right. Inside this should be a crawl space in the ceiling, a water faucet, and a wall on the right. The wall on the right, behind the actual wall, contains a passageway with an inscription about Gabe, a human trafficking victim that Jeffrey Epstein kept. I don't know what is behind the wall, but I remember as kids, we were both brought to this area and trafficked in and out of the premises along with other kids. So this is just, again, the tip of the iceberg, this stuff. You think about these things, secret walls and tunnels. There's a lot of mentions of tunnels in these documents too, underground tunnels. It's frightening to think about how little we know about this. Even with this 3 million plus document dump, we know so little. And also just a quick reminder is that this is only the stuff that was surrounding Epstein, right? The Epstein network was only one of probably, thousands or tens of thousands or more of these networks. Do you think that the CCP doesn't have its own Epstein-esque networks? The CCP has insane levels of blackmail footage, insane levels of honeypotting, child rape, all kinds of stuff. The KGBs, they mastered it. The KGB, they figured out that pedophilia and child abuse was one of the best blackmail tools there was. So the KGB, working together with the CCP, developed a lot of these tactics. Now, of course, they're being used with other agencies, with Mossad, CIA, etc. But that just remember that. As much as everyone wants to look at Jeffrey Epstein and say, this is the complete picture, it's all this, right? It all goes back to Israel, all goes back to the CIA. This is just one node of so many different networks. Unfortunately, we don't have access to those other ones, but I guarantee you they exist.